Welcome back onto the next edition of the Faster Beyond 50 podcast. It is brilliant to have you with us. My name is Brad Nadalt. We've got Lindsay Parry with us once again. Lindsay, nice to touch base and nice to be talking running for the over 50s once again.
Yep, and very cool to be answering some questions. So, yeah, we've been mixing it up here, but I'm looking forward to a round of Q&A. Yeah, it's been brilliant so far. So keep those questions coming. Yeah, I'm very excited about what the future holds.
Absolutely. So if you do have any questions you would like us to answer here on the podcast, all you need to do is click on the link that is in the description of this podcast. You can also click on the link in the description under the YouTube video. Just so you know, we are filtering the video questions to the top of the queue. So if you do have a question, you can either send it in written wise, you can send it in via audio voice note, or as we prefer is if you do it as a video, and then we can pop you on the video as well on the live stream. So please do check that out. The link is in the description. Lindsay, let's jump into the first question. This one is from Jim. Jim saying, hi, I did my 2-hour long run on Saturday, my longest run in 7+ years, which was 9.2 miles. Had some pain in my left foot ankle off and on, and some tightness in my right hamstring about 1.5 hours in, so slowed down and it went away. I rested on Sunday as per my schedule and did a 45-minute easy run this morning. I thought I had warmed up pretty well, but the same pain in the left foot and tightness in the right hamstring came back about 3/4 of the way through. I've been doing pretty well with the strength training and very happy with Saturday's run overall. Is there anything else I should be doing for the left foot or the right hamstring? What advice have you got for Jim?
Look, the injury ones over this sort of medium are always the hardest. But certainly the fact that hamstring, and it's the same hamstring, is tightening up rather than getting sore, just points to a little bit of a imbalance, not an imbalance, not the right word, but almost like a anterior hip tilt and torsion. So left side is slightly forward and rotated, and it's quite difficult to fix that by this sort of forum. Strength training absolutely helps. So some of the strength training that you are doing is going to help, but the problem is that unless we actually get those hips straightened out and in the right place, the strength can actually just like not exacerbate it, but it kind of holds it in place. So you're getting stronger and your body's may be better able to withstand the forces, but that force is still going to be going through the same side all the time. So for the hamstring, one of the things to get looked at there would be, you know, a session with physio or a very experienced sports massage therapist, and or possibly a chiro, just to make sure that your hips are really properly in alignment. That could also be impacting in the foot and the ankle, but of course with the foot and the ankle, we've got a couple of other things that could also be at play there. One of those could be shoes. So I would definitely have a look at shoe, make sure that you're in the right shoe for you and that it is supporting your mechanics. So if you are fairly neutral, you're not in a motion control shoe, for example, that's typically the most common error that I see being made, is that because we all do pronate slightly, and that's part of our shock absorption system, inexperienced people will go, oh yeah, you need a motion control shoe, and that can sometimes cause some stability and discomfort in the ankle joint. And then just checking the routes that you're running, making sure if you are running the same routes all the time, that you aren't always running on the same side of the road. So if you are running outside, just check that you aren't hitting a bad camber, and then that camber is then causing you to have that repetitive stress through that joint. So what to do about it in the short term? Well, in the immediate short term, slowing down seemed to have really removed that discomfort. So that's kind of good news, because it means that if you just run a bit slower and don't aggravate it, then in the short term, you can kind of work on a few things while you carry on running. And so you probably want to add 15 to 20 seconds per K or mile to slow down a bit while you're running. Work on that foot core, have a look at those shoes, and ice. Ice where the hamstring at the moment sounds literally like a tightness in response to what's happening while you're running rather than anything sore just yet. But with that tightness, if you try and increase the pace, or if you run up a really long hill, or if you do any sudden movement, that is a risk for injury. So right now, I don't think icing that spot will help, but icing the foot and the ankle will definitely just help with any short-term inflammation that is present. And stretching your hip flexors. I do both, but stretching the hip flexor, particularly on the affected side, might actually just help to release that hip slightly, at least from the anterior tilt, so that it reduces the stress going through that hamstring. That might make quite a big difference in the short term. But yeah, half a step back in training, dialing in on the foot core, putting a bit of ice there, making sure the shoes are not adding to the problem, checking the camber of where you're running, and then no high intensity, so no intervals or anything while you are feeling the way you are feeling now. And then let's see if we can get you back on track over the next 2 weeks.
Cool, Jim. Thanks for that question. Lindsay, next question from Mark, and this has got to do with Strava. I like this question. Mark says, I've enjoyed the social aspect of Strava for quite some time. However, seeing what everyone else is doing can make me feel a bit competitive. It's really relevant for me lately as my training's not really produced the greatest results. I've just been running the lower end of things and trying to get healthy for the fall when temperatures cool a bit. There are some runners locally that simply amaze me with what they can do. Some are even older than me. They simply crush their runs daily. Do others feel the same way, or is it just me? I thought it would be interesting to ask. Now that I'm crushing things again, it's perfectly okay. My wife says I'm way too competitive for 62. She may have a point, but that's what gets me out of bed some mornings. Is this normal? Like looking and comparing yourself to others on Strava, and what are the dangers of doing that?
So it absolutely is normal, and I often give talks in and around South Africa where I make a joke that in Durban in particular, the Strava police are quite bad. And in fact, the guilt is not only internally driven, or the competitiveness is there's also this external people comparing to each other. So it's not abnormal, and it can be both positive and destructive, just like most things in life. So I think it's good if you see other people performing quite well, that it does drive the competitive element. When it's destructive is when you are comparing physical training and workouts. So, he's talking about his peers crushing their workouts. Now, when he's fit and feeling good and running well, that doesn't bother him because his performances are good. But what's always important is, okay, fine, people are crushing workouts day in and day out, but how is that pushing through to their performances? And are they maybe running too hard, too often, and that's compromising performance? So I think you also have to have an awareness that, firstly, a lot of people, and especially the people who use Strava for the vanity metrics, don't always upload all their sessions on Strava. And so you always have to be careful of this element of, okay, but what isn't there? So that's one thing to always be aware of. And then secondly, most people just aren't sensible. So you can feel this pressure because so-and-so is crushing out 100 miles, 160 kilometers a week. But what are they training for? Is it beneficial? Are they getting to their races, or are they constantly finding themselves injured? When they get to races, are they performing? So you've really got to look at a lot of things. Where am I now in my training? So you are stating quite simply that you're in a bit of a maintenance phase, just trying to keep yourself in a good place so that you can start training when you need to start training. So where you are right now, those workouts just aren't relevant to you. So there is a strong psychological component, and I would probably, in your shoes, consider almost taking a break from Strava, switching off notifications and making it private for whenever you go through these periods. And then when you come out of those and you are training properly and you can look at the Strava posts for what they are and use them for motivation rather, because it doesn't bother you, then you switch on your Strava, let people see what you're doing and you can see what they are doing.
But Lindsay, if you turn it off, did that run actually happen? Because if it's not on Strava, it didn't happen. Isn't that how it works?
That is exactly how it works, and luckily it uploads in the background. And then when you switch it on, and whenever time, those workouts will always be there. So
Just not for everybody.
I had the opposite experience today, where it had loaded to Strava, but not onto my profile. And so Tutu couldn't see what I did. Shock horror. So, then I went and manually loaded it. So, yeah, as you said, it did happen because it was on Strava. I just had to feed it into our platform so that everyone could see that I've done it.
Mark, thanks for that question. Best of luck. Let's move on to this one from Irene, Lindsay, and it's about math. She's asking about math for long, easy runs. It starts off by saying 180 minus 70 equals 110 heart rate. I cannot run at that heart rate. All I do is walk with a bit of run on the downhills. I feel like I'm not preparing at all for my race. I'm frustrated on so many levels, trying to improve. Please help. Let's just take a step back here. First of all, what is math and what is Irene trying to do?
Yeah, so look, math or maximal aerobic function was developed by Dr. Phil Maffetone. And really it was in response to him being in practice and just seeing how many people were coming into his practice under extreme stress and very high cortisol levels and just training too hard every day. And so he designed this system of running at nothing hard, or walking, as is the case here, of under no higher heart rate than 180 minus age. And you can be much lower than that heart rate, but do not run any higher than that. And essentially all it does is this idea of using 220 minus age for a maximum wasn't really working in terms of calculating those zones properly because it was inappropriate. And so what Phil Maffetone did is he took a random number, 180. So he is very clear on that it was a number that he picked that would ensure that once we take your age off it, that everybody will be under threshold. And so that's literally what he based his premise on, is that he wants to make sure that when people run, they are nowhere near their threshold. And to ensure that, he would go like, well, 180 minus age, but then if there's any other issues, if you are consistently injured, if you have recently been ill, if you have been struggling to improve, we take another 5 off. And if there are multiple factors that are ailing you, you take multiple 5s off. And really all that he was doing there, the underlying philosophy was quite simply, if you're struggling, start out super, super, super easy. Okay, so that is in a nutshell what using the math or Phil Maffetone method of running works at. We have found it quite effective to use on the platform, particularly for runners that are returning from illness, or runners that have been overtraining for a really long period of time, or runners that are returning from injury. However, what we have also found is that as we get older, that 180 minus age actually takes us so far away from threshold that we have people who literally can't progress beyond walking. And the one thing that the math method requires is just enough stimulus to stimulate the change. Okay, so if you are running at too low a heart rate, and so there is such a thing as too low a heart rate, then we see the improvements are very, very slow, or non-existent. And so with the aging runner, we have found that 190 minus age is appropriate and works very well. So typically that extra 10 beats gives people that ability to do some running with walking, and then over time that'll progress to a point where there is a lot of running and very little walking, and that running is getting quicker and quicker and quicker as we go along. And then there are cases where people do not respond to MAF training. And I mean, I think this is typical of a lot of things in life, is that a lot of things work for a lot of people, but they do not work for some. And in those instances, we find that the principle still works, but that in those individuals, we really need to calculate what their actual threshold is so that we can recommend them training heart rates that are based on their threshold. And then we implement the MAF principles, which actually still work. They just needed more stimulus or different stimulus, or to be, or it was just too easy, those kind of things. So it absolutely works, but sometimes it does need some refining. And really all it is recognizing that we start easy enough that we really reduce the risk of injury, and that we really optimize, and that's an important word, we optimize the improvement of aerobic function for both health and fitness, so that you can continue to improve for years and not just in the short term. And that's really our goal.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, cool. Question from Lindsay. Lynn saying, I've recently joined Coach Parry and would like some advice on my long runs. I'm 68, only started running at 61, much to my family's surprise, and have always been a slow runner. Since coming back from a hip injury that sidelined me for 6 months at the end of last year, I'm finding I'm way slower. I have a half marathon in a few weeks that I'm gradually just been building up my distance for, and I'm not aiming to set any time goals. My aim's just to go the full distance. But my main focus will be another half marathon, which is early next year. I'm using the 3-hour training plan, and I noticed that the longest long run builds up to 2.5 to 2 hours. I am slow, so usually work this distance around will get me to about 15, 16 Ks for 2.5 hours. I'm wondering what approach would be better for me. Let's talk about time versus distance first of all. We obviously prescribe time versus distance on our training plans. Why is that, and what is the best way to go about it for Lynn? If you're over 50 and want to recover from sessions faster, run pain and injury-free, and improve your endurance, then be sure to join Lindsay and I for our upcoming Faster Beyond 50 Masterclass. In it, we'll show you how we helped a 70-year-old run a 47-minute, 18-second 10K, and how you can take those exact same principles and apply them in your training. Simply scan the QR code that's on screen right now, or click on the link in the description below to save your seat in the training now. We look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, so very simply, the reason why I have always used time is because pre-GPS days, I could then stop people from having a fixed distance that they try and get home faster and faster each time to essentially prove to themselves that they're getting fitter and faster. So it was an attempt to take away the focus on how fast I'm running, and to allow people and give them the room to do, if it's an hour easy, it's an hour easy. And we're not trying to pack as many kilometers into that hour as possible. Okay, now we've got GPS, which has taken that away, but I still like the principle there, which is that we run for time, not distance, because it does take a little bit of the kind of performance pressure out of it. But also what I'm trying to achieve with the time versus distance is, if we look at this overall look and feel of the plan, is that I don't want people to get into the trap, which is clearly evident, and most people fall into it, of chasing distance, okay, or chasing volume, or chasing number of kilometers a week. The reality is that performance is made up of the sum total of your training plan. It's got nothing to do with any single workout that you do in your entire training block. And so getting obsessed around numbers and having to run a particular distance at a particular time in relation to a particular race is actually counterproductive, and it takes us away from training for where we are now and what we are capable of now. So I wouldn't obsess about the distance. You are going to be prepared and prepared well to do your half marathon, particularly given your goals in this particular marathon, which is really just to get yourself back to running half marathons and doing the distance. Going back to kind of why your performance has deteriorated so much after that hip operation, that comes down to almost exclusively strength and in particular muscle atrophy. So when we are getting older, that is one of the biggest drivers of performance, and that is how strong are you and how much muscle are we losing and how much muscle are we able to maintain, because that's going to be your biggest ally in slowing down or keeping you at a similar speed for a longer period of time. So in the short term, really what you want to be focusing on is doing the strength training and doing it well and making sure that that left hip or right hip, depending on which side the operation was, that limb is going to come out fairly similar to the other limb. So you really want to be doing strength training, doing it hard, and making sure you're not favoring that leg and using your strong leg to kind of pick up the slack for the weak leg. You really want to be strengthening both of those up, making sure you can get them as equal as possible, and then you'll get back some of those performance gains that you've lost, and then training at the appropriate level for where you are now, not getting caught up in mileage, sticking to the time frames that are given. That's going to be what's going to get you back to close to where you were before you had the operation.
All right, great question. Thank you very much for that one, Lynn. And then, Lindsay, we've got a question on pacing. And I like this question because I think a lot of people struggle with this. So this one is from Janie. Janie saying, I notoriously go out too fast on my training runs. I want to run at 11:30 per mile, and I need to run at 11:30 per mile according to my training plan, and that seems super slow, except if I have to go for an hour, because if I do that without stopping, it's going to end up on 11:30 per mile. So what advice can you give someone about running at the appropriate pace and not starting out too fast, and what can you do to regulate your running pace?
Yeah, and there's two things here that are worth unpacking, and the one is that there is an inability to regulate intensity internally. So she's starting too hard, but then is flagging towards the end of a run. And in particular, it starts at an hour-long run, so it'll probably get worse the longer she ran. So there's definitely just an inability to gauge intensity, and that's not uncommon on people that are starting running or haven't run their entire lives. And there are some people that just never learn that governor, and you'll know if you're a club runner, you'll know that individual because they always go out way too hard on race day. You always catch them at about the 2/3 mark, whether it's a 1500, a 5K, a marathon. You typically catch them 2/3 to 3/4 of the way into the run. So that is where technology is very helpful. Okay, and if you set your bands on your watch so that your watch just beeps when you are going too fast, so that it forces you to slow down, or if you look down, if you're not actually setting zones, but you are loosely keeping track of what's going on. So if you have a look at your watch and you see, the last 2 kilometers or the last mile and a bit or 2 miles, I've been running too fast, then walk. Give yourself a minute and a half walk break so that you make sure you don't get yourself to that point where you are just exhausted and slowing down, and then we're getting our average to the right number, but it's because you are shattered at the end of the run. But definitely setting those limits on your watch and letting your watch beep when you go outside of those zones. That's the easiest way to manage it and the quickest way to get the information that I am running too fast. And if you don't have that, then look, you can teach yourself these things. You just, at the beginning, it's boring because you're checking your watch every 200 meters to make sure I'm not running too fast. But if you do that for a couple of weeks, it will teach you how to feel what is easy enough to be easy for a long run and not just for a really short run.
Yeah, Lindsay, and it's quite funny because when you do go out too fast, it never ends well. I remember the last marathon that I ran, I had exactly that. I knew I was going too fast, probably by about 15 seconds per kilometer. And I said to myself, I need to slow down, and I just didn't slow down. Like, I know how that's going to end, and that's exactly the way it ended. So it's one of those things that some of us are just a bit slower to learn these lessons than others.
No, absolutely. And like I said, experience can teach you this, but some people have an inability to feel intensity. I do feel, by the way, that GPS devices, as helpful as they have been with training, have in some ways made it harder for people to feel what they are doing. I had a bet with a guy once. I got back, it was my first year of university. I was still living in Res, and I got back from a run, and one of the guys asked me how far to run, and I went 17 Ks. I reckon if I'd rounded it either down or up, the oak wouldn't have questioned me, but my number was so specific, 17 Ks. So he looks at me, he's like, how do you know? I mean, I was wearing an old Casio Ranger with had a few. I mean, it didn't even have a lap function, and the watch didn't. You couldn't go like 10 laps or whatever. Nothing that fancy. So he was like, "No, man, how do you know?" And I was like, "I just know. Like, I know how fast I'm running. If I'm running fast, I know what speed I'm running. If I'm running slow, I know what speed I'm running." And I ran, and it took me this amount of time, and this was my effort. So he was like, "I don't believe you." So he was like, let's take a bet. So we actually bet a bottle of straw rum. It wasn't like an insignificant bet. And he was like, fine, what's the margin of error? And I said 200 meters. Okay. So he was like, yo, okay. So we jumped in his bucky and we drove, and it was 17.2 kilometers. So I won the bet. Our margin of error was 200 meters. I won the bet. And he was like, he couldn't believe it. He was like, I actually cannot believe that you knew that was. And then he wanted to accuse me of cheating, like that I had measured the route before. So I knew how long it was, and that's how I knew to make the margin of error 200 meters. But no, I just knew, and I feel like that ability has been lost a little bit with the advent of GPS. But having said that, most people still develop a feel for what is easy and what is hard. And if you don't develop it, then the GPS can still be useful because, it's telling you what speed you are running. So if you know that you should be running slower than that, slow down or increase the frequency of your walk breaks.
Absolutely. Some of us need to connect it to a car battery that every time we go too fast, it shocks us. I think that's the way we need to figure it out. That's definitely what I need. Lindsay, as always, great to catch up. Don't forget, if you've got a question that you'd like the coach to answer, all you need to do is click on the link that's in the description of this podcast or video. And we do love video questions. So those will get filtered up to the top. So if you do want to guarantee that your question gets answered, please do leave us a video question. Lindsay, until next time, thank you so much for your time today. We look forward to catching up again soon. And thank you for listening.